Oh, EA, you really fucked up this time, didn't you? The Star Wars Battlefront 2 fiasco is a worldwide discussion at this point, and it's widespread enough that even some of my non-gamer friends are talking about it. It all began with a beta when players complained about how the game's entire progression system revolved around loot boxes that teetered on pay to win with its star cards and whatnot. The issue only escalated further when players found out that iconic Star Wars characters like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader were locked behind a massive in-game currency paywall that demanded long hours of grind and in turn encouraged loot box purchases to earn credits from duplicates. EA then finally pushed the gaming community over the edge by posting the infamous sense of pride and accomplishment response that became the most downvoted comment in Reddit history. From there was no stopping the unrelenting train that became gamers' backlash. Soon enough, major media conglomerates picked up on the story, and government officials from all over the world began their own investigations on the matter, denouncing the practice of loot boxes as predatory and potentially dangerous to children, honing in on Battlefront 2 in particular. A very upset Disney eventually picked up on the shitstorm that was brewing against their Golden Goose Star Wars franchise, so after calling up EA CEO and Robbie Rotten's more evil twin brother Andrew Wilson, EA announced just hours before the game's launch that Battlefront 2 would temporarily be removing microtransactions from the game until they came up with a better, less controversial system. Since the removal of microtransactions, EA stocks took a big nosedive during Battlefront 2's launch day and in the days that followed. Furthermore, it was later reported that in the UK, Battlefront 2's first week physical sales were down by a whopping 61% compared with Battlefront 1. While some of that likely can be attributed to the rise of digital sales, a big chunk of that was likely a result of the game's PR nightmare. The nosedive in EA stocks and the disappointing launch sales were by far the most important developments in the battle against loot boxes, hitting EA where it actually hurt them: the money. No amount of backlash or media coverage would have mattered if it didn't dent their cash flow, but fortunately, it all culminated in very tangible results. Suffice to say that we told EA fuck you in the only language they speak. Now, according to a recent article by CNBC, that's not even the worst of it. EA's financial woes from the Battlefront 2 fiasco are still far from over. Here's what the article said. The company's profitable business model is now at risk after angry gamers revolted over its aggressive in-game money-making strategy in Star Wars Battlefront 2. EA stock is down 8.5% month to date through Tuesday compared with the S&P 500's 2% gain, wiping out a $3.1 billion of shareholder value. Its competitors Take-Two and Activision Blizzard shares are up 5% and 0.7% respectively during the same time period. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the gaming community as a collective just gave EA a $3.1 billion worth of fuck you in their native language, which is no small dent. Furthermore, Battlefront 2 sales also disappointed during the crucial Black Friday weekend, according to Wall Street analyst Drew Crum, who wrote the following note to his clients. We were underwhelmed by sell-through for Star Wars Battlefront 2 over the Black Friday weekend, which follows a controversial launch for the game. Well, that certainly explains photos like these posted during and after Black Friday. But the game's weak sales are the least of EA's problems when you consider that over the past couple of years, the company has put all their eggs in one basket: microtransactions, a basket that's starting to come apart. EA's most profitable venture by far is the Ultimate Team microtransaction system that they've implemented across their various sports titles, which by itself generated $800 million in high profit margin sales during the previous year. Furthermore, EA has expressed interest to extend a similar mechanic to other franchises like Battlefield and Battlefront to further the company's growth. But after recent developments, the entirety of this Achilles heel of a strategy is now at risk, and this is where EA is going to get hit hard. As the article so aptly put it, the viability of its profitable microtransaction strategy is now in question going forward. And this is especially true now that government officials all over the world are getting involved in the discussion to regulate predatory gaming practices like EA's microtransactions and loot boxes. One Wall Street analyst, seeing the incoming shitstorm for gaming giants like EA among others whose business rely on predatory loot boxes, is calling for the game industry to self-regulate before the government gets involved, stating, Battlefront 2 is the pointy tip of the iceberg. The biggest recent controversy has centered around EA's Star Wars Battlefront 2, where early evidence suggests player anger over a mishandled loot box economy may in fact be impacting initial sales. We think the time has come for the industry to collectively establish a set of standards for microtransactions implementation, both to repair damaged player perceptions and avoid the threat of regulation. Yeah, I mean, that would most certainly be the ideal solution. If the gaming industry can come together and regulate itself so that companies like EA will dial it back a notch or 10 and keep it in their pants, then there's no need for the government to get involved. But so long as EA continues exploiting the games as services and pay-to-win loot boxes business model, and I get the sense that they won't go down without putting up a fight to protect what is essentially the company's Achilles heel, gamers will keep protesting and the government will take notice and have more fuel to implement legislation against these kinds of practices. So it's your move, game publishers. You decide how this shit is going to go down. Either back the fuck off with your bullshit or continue to expect backlash from the gaming community, the media, and government officials across the world. Now, it is worth noting that self-regulation does come with its own risks. The situation that we're in right now is actually not too dissimilar from when the Entertainment Software Association, the trade association for the video game industry, was first founded back in 1994 and when they came to form the ESRB rating system. The present-day conversation may center around loot boxes, but over 2 decades ago, the gaming industry's main topic of controversy was violence depicted in games like Mortal Kombat. Much like with the loot box controversy, government officials quickly threatened to impose legislation on video game violence, namely in the form of the Video Game Ratings Act of 1994, which would have set a government oversighted commission to establish a rating system for video games if the gaming industry didn't come up with their own. Recognizing the threat of government regulation, gaming companies eventually established the Interactive Digital Software Association, or IDSA, which was later renamed in 2013 to how it's known now, the Entertainment Software Association, or the ESA. After the association was formed, they subsequently formed the Entertainment Software Rating Board, or the ESRB, a system that Congress accepted and has since become the standard rating system for games in the US. Now, the issue with the ESA is that with EA being one of its members, the publisher has a lot of pull and money to throw around to influence how the gaming industry self-regulates. There's a reason why the ESRB, a subsidiary of the ESA, was so quick to defend EA and their loot box practices, declaring that they're not gambling. It was less about making a fair deliberation to protect players from predatory practices, and more to do with ensuring that the gaming industry and companies like EA can continue to make fat stacks through predatory practices without much oversight. So while self-regulation does sound ideal to some extent, the risk of corruption does come into play, which is why it might be important for government to step in and kind of give them a scare so that they'll back off and properly implement regulations to protect players and children from all these predatory and exploitative practices. But at the end of the day, it is up to EA and other greedy publishers to decide how they want this to go down. The conversation is too big at this point for them to think that this will just simply blow over and that things will go back to normal. They won't. They can either keep pushing predatory practices, continue to instigate protests from gamers, and risk the government cracking down on them like they did so many years ago with violence in video games, or they can back the fuck off with their rampant greed and dial back the microtransactions and loot boxes to an acceptable level. Now, in an ideal world, I'd love for microtransactions and loot boxes to be gone outright, specifically for premium AAA titles that are already charging a significant initial fee. But if I'm being realistic, it is unlikely that microtransactions will be going anywhere. That doesn't mean, however, that we can't keep publishers at bay like we did with Battlefront 2, or have them jump through hoops moving forward anytime they intend to pull some bullshit. Doesn't mean that we as gamers can't stigmatize predatory microtransactions and loot box practices so that more and more publishers will be discouraged from implementing them. Anyway, the bottom line of this video is that EA just lost a shit ton of money, their reputation got dragged through the mud, and they deserve all of it. And the ones who made it happen? You, the gamers, who made your voices heard loud and clear. While we're still very far away from a full victory, this is certainly still cause for protesting gamers to celebrate. Just don't let your guard down, keep the fire of the conversation alive, and let's see where this tumultuous journey takes us. I'll certainly be there to document every minute of it for you guys. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this video informative, and if you enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon. All contributions will go towards helping this channel stay 100% independent and self-sustained. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.